All right, guys, we're out here to do the on the water impressions with possibly the most important baitcaster reel in history. That's the Shimano Bass Rise $50 baitcaster that has no ball bearings. So I'm going to start out with the setting on the mag dial at maximum. I'm not sure how these brakes work, or the characteristics I should say, and I'm going with the usual, just removing the side to side play on the spool tension. I'm going to start out with the standard 1/4 ounce square bill, and let's see what this thing's all about. Now the lake is super low, even lower than previously, and it's really windy out here today. So I'm sure I'm going to blow this reel up at one point or the other. Hopefully not too bad. Okay, so just a couple of sidearm casts to let the fresh line settle on the spool. Yeah, these are really strong brakes. I say that probably went 15 yards tops, if that. Okay, so the retrieve for having no ball bearings is actually not too bad. I'm sure there's 4 bushings under the knobs. And as to be expected, not a hint of backlash or overrun with the brake setting to maximum. So let's turn this down a couple of clicks. Spool is still really controlled. And to be honest, when I'm retrieving this lure in, you'd be hard pressed to tell that this has no ball bearings. And that's no ball bearings on the spool either. Once again, this is just using bushings on the spool. All right, let's go down another couple of clicks. Okay, the spool started to get unruly there, but the distance went up. Now, one thing I can tell you, because I guess it's because it has no ball bearings, this reel is super quiet during the cast. It's really, really quiet. Let me get up here on this. All right. So the retrieve is not too bad. I'm surprised, pleasantly surprised. So, against my better judgment, I'm going to go down one more click to see what this spool acts like. Okay, that went a long way. There was a backwind, but still, that was probably about 30 yards. So I'm going to go down 2 clicks to see if it'll solve the overruns. Distance was a little shorter, but the overruns are gone. So you could actually get away if you thumb it a little with going down one more click on the brake. So this thing, it feels just like a normal baitcaster. You would never know this has no ball bearings. Alright, I'm pleasantly surprised. But then again, this thing has a really light spool, as I showed in the tabletop video, 14.5 grams. So I guess the question is, would it cast farther with ball bearings instead of bushings? I actually may do that test. Went down one click. Yeah, on the backswing, the lure hit the cement there. So I'm not sure if this is really going any farther than the other reels that threw this lure. Because the water levels are so different, it's hard to judge. It's gonna go back down, actually go back up one click. Once again, it's really quiet. The only thing you hear is the line zipping through the guide. All right, so far I'm impressed. Palming is comfortable. Not as comfortable as, let's say, a CURADO. It's kind of high on the reel seat, somewhat. Okay, so with this braking system, it's pretty clear when you hit the limit. I think I'm right on the edge of the limit. I can turn the brakes down one more time and it will probably blow up at least a little bit unless I thumb the spool. What the crap is this? So there we go. I think we found the correct setting for this particular lure on this particular day. Alright, so we have the Lucky Craft Gunfish. And this wind is really kicking up. And it's going to take this lure towards the bank. But let's see what happens. Let's go down 2 clicks. Okay, so that overran. And there's some kind of a bird that's gonna chase my lure. But it saw the overrun solved itself towards the end. Now I think I can actually go down a couple of clicks on these brakes. Well, maybe one. Whoa, that went a long way. Probably at least 35 yards. So with this brake setting, I was getting pretty bad overruns. So I'm going to turn it down one click. So that went pretty far, even though it was wind aided. And I don't know if you guys can hear, but it's just super quiet. This reel makes no noise other than the line going through the guide. Okay, there's a characteristic of magnetic brakes that I don't like. If your brake setting is too low and you put more effort into the cast than the last cast, you can overpower that magnetic field and cause a blow up like this. So one thing I love about centrifugal brakes is that they're proportional. The brake force is proportional to the speed of the spool. With a magnet system like this that's static, you can actually overpower that magnetic field. And that's why a lot of magnetic brakes, reels with magnetic brakes I should say, can seem inconsistent. Perfectly controlled spool. All right, let me go back down one click. Okay, I didn't put too much effort into that. And you can see the spool was more or less pretty controlled, except for a couple of loops. Now, if I really heave back like I'm going to do now, let's see if it'll blow up. Yeah, so I put way more effort into that cast and it overpowered the magnetic brakes there. So overall, it's a pretty slick little reel for 52 bucks. I don't think it's going to set any casting records, especially with bushings instead of bearings. But you can easily swap that out. The bushings are probably holding this thing back. But as it stands out of the box, it's still a pretty decent caster for the money. Okay, that was bad. Okay, a few more casts with the brake setting a little over halfway towards maximum. Okay, it's pretty cold out here, so I think this is going to be the last couple of casts. I think I got a good sense of how this reel operates, and I think I'm going to take it out tomorrow and actually go fishing. And hopefully I can hook into some bass and see how this handles fighting a fish. Very interested to know that, considering the graphite frame. Okay, so the Shimano Bass Rise $50 Baitcaster. And what can I say about this thing after my brief period out on the water casting around with it? Well, the first thing I can say, this thing is super quiet. It like literally makes no noise during the cast or the retrieve. The only noise it makes during the cast is the line coming out of the line guides. And I think we all know that's because of the bushings that it uses instead of ball bearings. Now it's really solid and feels well made, other than the front plate right here. Basically, the best compliment I can give it in that respect is if someone handed you this reel mounted on a rod and just had you start fishing, you wouldn't probably immediately know that this was made of graphite or it had no ball bearings. Now, as far as casting, I'll say it's I guess an above average caster, and I think that's because of the lightweight spool. I think the bushings probably held it back in casting, but they seem to free spin pretty good. So I'm not sure. I'm going to see if I can find a set of ball bearings for this thing to see if that'll improve it after I run it through all the tests against the other reels. Now, as far as the braking system, well, it looks cool inside. Out on the water, it performs pretty typical to a magnetic braking system, especially the typical static systems where the magnets stay in the same place, meaning that in some cases you can overpower the magnetic field if you cast too hard and cause an overrun. So I found out that this was sold here in America under the CAES name. It was the previous generation CAES, and it was orange. And I believe it actually came with 3 ball bearings, but everything else was pretty much the same. So that leads me to the rod. I decided on the rod, and I just picked it up at Walmart the other night. And that's going to be the Berkeley Lightning Rod Shock. I'm not sure how to say that correctly. You should say Lightning Shock Rod, but whatever. Now, it was going to come down to this or the Abu Garcia Vengeance, and both of those rods were in the store, and I held them both. And surprisingly, this rod, the Shock Rod, felt better than the Vengeance. And I particularly like the pretty thick grip. I know a lot of rods these days are the super thin grips, but this feels really good for a $50 rod, and it was actually on sale for $39, so that was a big plus as well. So yeah, I know it's not going to match, but who cares? This is a sub $100 combo that I'm going to be fishing this winter to see what this Bass Rise is all about. Alright guys, thanks a lot.